Shortly before midnight on October the 16th, Brown determines the time is right. He will gather his men and say to them, "Get on your arms, we shall proceed to the ferry."
They descend down the mountain road from the Kennedy farmhouse. Harper's Ferry comes into view just across the river. It's a twinkling fairy tale city, quiet, remote, not a single inhabitant there had any idea about how history was suddenly to explode in their very midst.
Brown and his provisional army traveled the 6 miles from the Kennedy farm to the Potomac River crossing.
There they make their way across on foot on an old railroad bridge. And as they approach the railroad station, someone walks out to see who they are. A voice calls out in the night. Someone says, "Halt." The silence is broken by a rifle shot. A body thuds to the ground.
Ironically, the first man killed in Brown's raid was a free black man, a baggage master named Haywood Shepard.
During the night, several of Brown's men fanned out into the estate area west of Harper's Ferry toward Charlestown, specifically to seize several estate owners, primarily Colonel Lewis Washington, the great-grandnephew of George Washington.
Hostages taken, John Brown's men continue to their primary target.
They come sneaking across the railroad bridge over the Potomac. They dash across the intersection to the government armory and arsenal. There's a night watchman on duty. This poor guy has no idea what is happening to him. Suddenly, he's surrounded by armed men with guns, and he's confronted by this man with blazing eyes and a flowing white beard.
I came here from Kansas, and this is a slave state. I have possession now of the United States Armory, and if the citizens interfere with me, I must only burn the town and have blood. John Brown.
The first part of the plan had succeeded brilliantly. What Brown didn't count on was that the alarm would go out to the townspeople and that they would react defensively. Brown had expected no opposition whatever from the townspeople. Instead, what happened was that very quickly they began to besiege Brown. Shots rang out.
The outlaw chief had by this time perceived that instead of hundreds of allies, he was hemmed in by thousands of infuriated enemies. He retired into the fire engine house within the public grounds. When they next appeared in the street, one of the outlaws was shot down. D.H. Strother, journalist, 1859.
The dead man was former slave Dangerfield Newby.
He is shot through the neck with an iron spike from one of the guns of the townspeople, and his body is hauled off where he's mutilated, and later his body is fed to hogs in a local alley.
Once the siege starts, the scene inside the fire engine house where Brown and his men are holed up quickly becomes something of a bedlam. They can't see out very well. They don't know what's going on around them. When they do fire out, the brick walls in this very confined small building, only about 30 feet square, echo tremendously with the sound of the loud reports of these weapons.
Brown expected that the slaves in the plantations nearby in Virginia would come to his aid, take the pikes and weapons that he'd acquired, and help him succeed in this revolt. And so when the time came, Brown's help did not materialize.
Willie Lehman, a 19-year-old raider, realized that things weren't going well and decided to escape. So he scurried down the armory wall, ended in the river, began swimming north toward Maryland in an effort to get away from the militia and the town citizen. He became exhausted.
Under fire from 20 militiamen, Lehman crept to a rock in the Potomac and became the next raider to die.
Since this is an attack on a United States installation, the President, Buchanan, calls in U.S. troops. The nearest troops available were in Washington, the Marines at the Washington Naval Yard. They were brought to Harper's Ferry via train, and their commander, Lieutenant Colonel Robert E. Lee, was also brought to Harper's Ferry.
Lee realizes when he gets to Harper's Ferry, it's too late to do anything that day, so he's going to wait till the next morning, and his troops are going to storm the engine house itself.
During that terrible night, Brown paced the engine house, surveying the scene. His son Watson had been shot that day, and he lay beside his dying brother, Oliver.
When the sun comes up, Brown sees that he's no longer facing just some farmers and some townspeople, but he's facing men in the blue uniform of the United States Marines. And sooner or later, he comes to know that he's also facing Colonel Robert E. Lee.
If they will peaceably surrender themselves and restore the pillaged property, they shall be kept in safety to await the orders of the President. Colonel Lee represents to them in all frankness that the armory is surrounded on all sides by troops, and that if he is compelled to take them by force, he cannot answer for their safety. R. E. Lee, Colonel, commanding United States troops.